Go behind it.
Probably 3 or 4. So yeah, we're gonna mic test 1 2. Mic test 1 2. Mic test 1 2. Turn it up. Testing 1 2. Testing. Hello. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Mic test 1 2. Testing 1 2. Mic test 1 2. Hello. 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 Test. Hello. Mic test 1 2. Testing 1 2. Hello. Testing 1 2. Hello. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Hello. Hello.
Is it
Testing.
Yeah, perfect. I have one more. Just want to make sure if something doesn't work, I have a spare, but
100%.
two should be good up there. Because it's mic level.
Right.
Because it's not this. The HDMI is what the audio output is set to.
Right.
cable.
Find out.
Yeah, let's go pick this up. So this thing doesn't have power. All good.
Unplug Lisa's thing.
say hi. Okay.
We met on time. Yeah. I was walking around the office. What it's worth, I've been reading your minutes for the past week. Yeah. Last year. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Executive Election Debate. I'd like to begin by first acknowledging that the University of Waterloo and that all of us live and work on the traditional territory of the Arawang-Taran, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Halaman Tract, land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Without further ado, we'll go straight into the debate and give the microphone to Imprint to run the show. So, thank you, Seneca.
Hi, and welcome to Politics and Popcorn, hosted by Imprint, your official student newspaper, where this year's executive candidates debate the topics that matter to you. I'm Varun, this is my co-host Josh. So we're going to begin with the presidential candidates. And I just want to begin by giving you guys a quick intro to what they do. So the president manages the student government, conducts meetings, and represents the interests of the undergrad students of UW. They receive a salary of about $50,000 plus benefits. So this year there's 3 candidates running for president. We have Abby Simpson from Team Vision. There's Stanley Wong from Team Hey Hey, and Kevin McGuire from Team Extinguish. The latter 2 candidates are not present today, so it's just Abby. And we're going to begin by giving Abby a couple minutes to introduce herself and talk about where she's coming from.
Testing. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'd like to first take the time to introduce myself. My name is Abby Simpson, and I'm running to be your president for WUSA's 2020-2021 Executive. Over the past 4 years, I have been a part of this campus community, and as a recreation and leisure and social development studies student, I specialize in social policy and community development. My first interaction with WUSA was back in 2017 as a student counselor. There, I learned about our student government and the impact of our student leaders on campus. Next, I worked as a service executive and coordinator for a service with a mandate to create community here on campus. And after 4 years of heavy involvement in student leadership, I have taken on a responsibility to be a key member of the Long Range Plan Committee. I hope to take my experience and my leadership, knowledge of campus stakeholders, and passion for community development to guide the implementation of the long-range plan and create lasting change within our organization and our campuses and of the overall U-Waterloo community. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight, and I look forward to all of your questions.
Thank you so much. So for each question, you'll be allotted 4 minutes to respond. We will remind you when you have 30 seconds left, and then cut you off when your time is up. We will also have time for questions from the audience, so be prepared. So to begin with the first question, the president of WUSA is the lead advocate for student interests at UW. Why should the 33,000 undergrad students at UW trust you to do a good job over your year in office?
Well, one of the reasons I believe students should trust me is because I believe in collaboration. I believe that by collaborating with students across campus and taking into account their unique and individual voices, that's the best way that I can do my job and advocate for you. So one of the ways that our team decided to take that to the next level is to advocate for more town halls here on campus, that we can listen to you and you can have a better space to provide us with input. And if you think that we are doing something wrong, then you can provide your feedback directly to us in a forum where you can be there with your peers and really provide us with some concrete examples of ways that we can improve.
Okay, and question 2. People from various cultures and backgrounds from all over the world come to UW for their undergrad studies. What steps would you take to ensure WUSA represents all members of UW's diverse student body?
Great, so we are very lucky here that we have a lot of great student societies who are doing some wonderful advocacy work here on campus. So again, we would want to make sure that we're collaborating and really listening to those societies that are already doing great work. Our role is to empower those students to bring their voices forward. So we would want to make sure that we are listening to students in all of our societies, our clubs that are representing these unique groups, and taking their individual experiences into account before creating our advocacy decisions.
Thank you. And ever since the Student Choice Initiative, student unions in Ontario specifically have a perception problem with low engagement and high opt-out rates from students. With this in mind, how would you improve WUSA's image?
Great, so that's actually something that I mentioned briefly in my introduction. I am very passionate about community development, and something that I've noticed since I was a first-year student is the lack of community and the image that Waterloo students have. We are known on many platforms to be boring or not engaging at all with our student union, so I would want to make sure that we are really taking a focus on engagement, and I believe that that starts in first year with our member transition practices. Oh, sorry, did I miss? Okay.
Perfect, and if I could even ask you to take it a step further then. Sure. So you want to drive student engagement and you want to have these town halls. How do you see the two being correlated with each other?
Great, so we believe that if students have more opportunities to actually engage with WUSA and provide their feedback, that they might be more inclined to, say, show up to those general meetings and have their voices heard, or they might actually put their neck in the ring and sit exactly where I am right now. So we would say that those town halls correlate to more engagement, more membership, because of their ability to actually have a voice in a space that is made for them to have a voice.
Question 4 from us. At a regional level, WUSA must represent the interests of the UW student body. Over the past year, we encountered problems such as the housing crisis and the GRT strike. What do you think are the most important issues to discuss with the region of Waterloo?
Yeah, so definitely I was at the council meeting where they were discussing the housing crisis and listened to the stories of students who were having some issues within our region. And as a student who has also dealt with some issues in our region, specifically I lived at Icon, and that posed a greater risk, and I'm sure that some people in the room have also experienced that as well. That would definitely be something that we would push for. One thing that Megan will be working on if she is elected in the next year would be to take the housing strategy that is currently being developed and take that and advocate to the region. So we do believe that that is one of the major issues for students right now.
Perfect, and so aside from the housing, could you also just focus a bit more on the transportation aspects of it?
Yeah, so that is actually a part of our platform as well. One thing that Megan and I will work on is to have our transportation as an essential service for students, making sure that students will always have a way to get to campus. It is an accessibility issue, and students need to be able to get to campus easily, fast, and on their own schedule to make it to classes on time. If we're not doing that, then our campus is just inaccessible. So we want to make sure that the region is aware that these are issues that are affecting students and that transit becomes an essential service so that we never have to face something like what just happened in the past week ever again, or at least to that extent.
And while maintaining a close relationship with the university is important, especially student government's responsibility is to advocate for the student body. So how do you balance your relationship with the university while also battling for student rights?
So I guess one of the good things about having worked in various departments on campus is you know who to pressure and you know who to contact. Being able to have those key relationships with stakeholders to be able to start those discussions and talk to them on a personal level, but then also on a professional level to advocate for all students on campus. If you're able to have that relationship right off the bat, then they know that you're coming in there with reasonable asks, or if you're coming in there to the conversation with something that they deem to be unreasonable, then you can at least talk them down to a reasonable position. So then you're creating those relationships with the campus community and with our university partners to really push for the decisions for students. Does that answer your question?
Could you speak more to your experience? What do you feel gives you that background to tackle that issue?
Great. So I spent some time this past year working in the office of the president as a communications coordinator. So I was there, I was able to sit a few offices down from Ferriton and have conversations directly with him. Even today, I was sitting in a room with Ferriton and upper year students, sitting right beside Chris Reed, which is a major major partner for our student association. So I've been able to develop these relationships already and create those dialogues and conversations already about what students need. So that's one specific example, but I've also worked in the School of Computer Science and the Faculty of Mathematics, marketing and undergraduate recruitment, which is actually the first touch point for a lot of students who are probably sitting in this room right now, and be able to talk about the kind of marketing that we are presenting to students right off the bat. So I have a lot of experience working and talking with higher ups in each of these departments, and I think that that would be very valuable for our student association.
For certain, I think we all value the abilities that communications give us. However, the student government has reached impasses at certain points. We've undergone referendums every year since 2017. There was a referendum for defunding WPIRG, legal services, granting GRT passes to part-time students, and even for Fall Reading Week, which we all enjoy. What referendum do you see the school holding this year? And how do you think Feds will have a role? How do you think WUSA will have a role in that?
That's a really interesting question. I actually don't know how to answer that. I'm not sure what referendum will be next. If I had to take a guess, it would probably be something to pressure the region of Waterloo to deal with our housing crisis, but I don't see that coming in because we do have our housing strategy plan, so that might not be something that comes up. So I apologize that I can't answer that question.
And a classic question next. What do you plan on doing in your first 50 days in office if you're elected?
My first how many days, sir?
50 days in office.
50 days in office? I guess the first thing I'd want to do is roll out our long-range plan to our staff and our student leaders, so making sure that we are all on the same page about our measurements and how we are going to start to make change over the first year and then for the next 5 years. So that would definitely be something that I'd start to do. I'd want to make sure that all of our staff and our students are trained to make sure that we are all on the same page and ready to go right off the bat the moment I get in there.
At this moment, we'd like to take a break from our own questions and see if anyone in the audience has any questions.
Oh, I see one.
Hi. So, hello? Oh, is it work? I can't tell. Okay. Yeah. So I have a couple questions. The first question was, you're talking a lot about your plans once you get elected, but do you have any like concrete, tangible examples of things you would implement as soon as you come in office?
Sorry, in regards to like just my entire platform, or?
Just like a couple examples that would incentivize people to vote for you in a less engaged way. So there's a lot of people who don't really care about the campus politics and don't really care about student government, but they do care about certain services that are provided and don't really care where it comes from. So are there some sort of like services or incentives that you're providing?
Sure. So one of my main platform points is sustainability and actually also collaboration with the student societies. So there's two kind of points that I would want to touch on for each of those. So for the first one, sustainability, is myself and the VP Operations and Finance candidate on my team, Alana. We want to work to kind of examine the practices that we're using in our commercial operations. So right now, iNews, and then create a plan for our future commercial operations. So we would want to look at, say, the amount of packaging that we use in our iNews location and see if there's a possibility for like our own bring your own container program for some of our grab and goes, or actually finding a way to reduce the amount of plastics that we're using in iNews. That could be one example of something that we would want to implement. But again, that will be more of a long-term thing that does happen over the year that we would start to do almost immediately. Another thing that I'll say is we want to focus more on society collaboration. So when I was in consultation with all of our student societies across campus, one thing I noticed was, without fail, all of our student societies want to be more engaged with each other. So going to our student societies and seeing if there's opportunities for collaboration and bringing our student societies closer together would be something that I would want to work on over the next year. So really maintaining those relationships.
My second question was, you mentioned advocacy a lot, and just now you mentioned sustainability. So as an NBUS student, I'm very focused on sustainability on the campus. And recently, Fossil Free UW has been trying to advocate to these universities board to divest from fossil fuels, and they've had some struggles in like being able to communicate their ideas and getting someone to advocate for them in board meetings and like regional town hall meetings. So how would you yourself help Fossil Free UW and just the sustainability community on campus to get that advocacy and get these goals that we'd like to reach?
That's a really great question. It's actually something that I was talking to Faradin about this afternoon at his cafe, and we were chatting a little bit about what our sustainability goals on campus look like. And I'm sure as a student who is passionate about sustainability, you have read our goals for 2050. So really what we would want to do is pressure the university into actually completing their sustainability goals from now until 2050, seeing if there's ways that we can kind of push them a little further than they're moving right now, and empowering the students that you just talked about to bring their ideas to us so that we can take those to those campus stakeholders that I was talking about earlier. When it comes to divestment itself, that is a bit of a tricky topic because when it comes to WUSA and when it comes to the university itself doesn't handle all of those investments. That's done by a company that they've hired to handle all of that. So it is something that they are slowly trying to do and are making bounds towards, and it's something that Faradin himself is very passionate about because he has heard students just like you. So we would just want to make sure that we are keeping up to date with what the university is currently doing and pressuring them to keep moving forward with these plans and not just leave it as something on the back burner. But again, it is difficult to discuss because the university, it may seem like it's so easy for Faradin to just snap his fingers and there we go, we're divested, but it's a little bit harder than that. But it's something that we will continue to check up on and make sure that we're empowering students to continue to hold us accountable so that we can hold the university accountable.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'd like to do another call for questions. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Right ahead.
Hi, I'm a huge mental health advocate, so I was just looking to get some more information on like what your stance is for mental health and wellness on campus and where that would lie in terms of a priority for if you're in office and whatnot.
Sure, so that's actually a major priority for myself and the VP Education candidate, Megan. It's something that we spent a lot of time thinking about. One thing that the both of us came up with was mainly two modes of looking into the issue. The first one was the amount of workload that students have on campus, so addressing some of those root issues of mental health on campus. So how can we create a better community here? One thing that was identified to us through consultation and from personal experiences was workload and the amount students feel like stressed out to be on campus, and then I guess just anxious in general. So really going for those data-driven ways that we can address those issues, and Megan will probably speak more to that when she comes up here and talk. But I'll speak a little bit about something that I'm very passionate about, and that's creating more community on campus. I believe that one of the reasons why people feel this isolation or this lack of sense of place or belonging on campus is because we don't have a campus culture where people feel comfortable to reach out and support each other. And one of the ways that WUSA itself can create that for people is by making small changes to create that campus culture where people feel comfortable reaching out. Something that we can do is, going back to the point that I made about society collaboration, create more of those collaborations between societies so that people can make friends outside of their society, outside of their silo, and bring everyone together with either a keystone event or just through events where people can talk and make relationships and build strong foundations while they're here on campus. So our approach to mental health advocacy is more looking at those root causes of why our campus culture is dealing with a lot of mental health, and really addressing those root issues before we can get to some of that top level stuff. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
So typically a lot of individuals, when they're elected, they get really excited about the role, and they kind of have this, they almost want to reinvent the wheel in a way, and have their own passion projects and whatnot. But it's also important to build upon what the previous exec has been working on. What goals do you have that kind of build on stuff that Michael and Richard and Antonio did in previous years?
Sure, that's a really good question. I will say, my main goal over the next year is just making sure that we are in a good place with our strategic plan, our long-range plan. So I guess we have different priorities from Antonio's year and Richard's year. Richard's actually here. Hi, Richard. I have different priorities than those past executives. However, I am seeing that the work that Michael is currently doing with our societies, where he's trying to build those gaps and bridge those relationships, and I'd like to continue to do that, to create more collaboration with our societies. But I will say, with the long-range plan, we are going to be hopefully rolling out some different ways of looking at our campus community and the different responses that we have to different advocacy questions. So I guess life is a bit different here on campus from Antonio and Richard's year, so we need to kind of take an approach. He's laughing at me. We need to take a different approach, and that will come through the long-range plan. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, we have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
So one of the biggest issues for students this year has been the lack of affordable student housing. So the current administration has done some things to take strides there, but how would you work to solve the problem, building off what they've done, but also bringing in your own kinds as well?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my VP Education, Megan, and I would work together to take the housing strategy that Matt is currently developing and implement it and use that to advocate to the region for more affordable housing. I know that they're starting to do some things in Kitchener, and we want to make sure that we're just making sure that some of that comes over here to Waterloo, and then taking the recommendations from Matt to take everything that he's saying and implement that as soon as possible.
Michael Boschman, the current WUSA president, originally advocated restructuring the executives team so that the vice presidents answer to the president of WUSA. He later would advocate for examining or re-examining the structure according to how other successful not-for-profits work. What managerial style would you implement to lead your own team?
As I mentioned, I am a big fan of collaboration between myself and my vice presidents. I believe that they offer a lot to myself and my leadership style. Being able to actually work in a team doesn't necessarily mean being what everybody considers to be a leader all the time. Sometimes that means empowering the people around you to also be leaders and take on those leadership roles. So there's opportunities for me to be more of a project manager when it comes to some of the things that we want to implement. So maybe I'm not the one actually leading the charge going forward, but I'm making sure that all the pieces along the way are there so that I can support my VPs. But I would make sure that all of our priorities are moving along the way that they should, as any good manager does. So giving my VPs the power to fulfill their portfolios while making sure that the organization and the long-range plan are being adhered to. Definitely be my managerial style.
And one final question for you.
Sure.
So with your mental health plans, you've talked about using a data-driven approach. So what exactly do you mean by that, and what kind of variables are you trying to consider?
Sure, so that would actually be more of a question for Megan, because that would be the part of her platform that she will be focusing on. So I would actually highly recommend bringing that up to Megan, because that'll be something that I'm supporting her with, but she would be a better person to ask the question to.
Okay. Thank you for coming down and answering our questions. Yes, and we'll allow you a 20-second plug. Anything you want to say, anything you want to tell the student body.
Great, I'm really proud of our Team Vision team and everything that we've done over the past week, and actually over the past couple months as we created our platform and worked together to create a change for students over the next year. I would highly recommend going and checking out our website. Quick way to get there is bit.ly/teamvisionuw, and you can check out all of our social medias. We have Instagram, Team Vision UW, and also our Facebook is fb.me/teamvisionuw, and that has all of our platform information and everything that we want to work on together over the next year.
Yeah. All right. Next up, this year's candidates for WUSA Vice President of Operations and Finance. The VP of Ops and Finance manages the budget, ensures legal compliance, oversees human resources at WUSA, and they receive a salary of around $50K plus benefits.
This year we only have one candidate running for VP Ops and Finance, Alana from Team Vision. During the election, she will require a 50% approval from the voters to take office. So Alana is a fourth-year economics student who's been working with WUSA since 2015, and her key platform points are ensuring fiscal responsibility by recognizing gaps in commercial operations, ensuring student input is weighted heavily with the Bomber project, and providing more student job opportunities through WUSA. For each question, you'll have about 4 minutes to respond. We'll remind you when you have 30 seconds left by holding up a white paper, and we'll also have times for questions for the audience once again.
To begin with question one, you can take a seat first of all if you want, or you can stand. Perfect. All right. That wasn't a question though. The Student Choice Initiative has cut funding to many organizations at UW. Many of WUSA's fees are optional, but students are confused about their purpose. How would you make sure that students know the purposes of their fees and make an informed decision during the opt-out process?
Well, I think WUSA is doing a very good job with that thus far. We have booths generally throughout the first few weeks of school where we inform students of these things. If they try to come to one of our events and they haven't paid the fee, we have a booth where we explain exactly what it is and that they can opt in. But we also make it an option for them if they don't want to opt into the fee, that they can pay a fee just to get into the event. So I think that we're already doing a really good job of that. It's all on the page when you go to pay your fees. You can click which ones you want and which ones you don't, and it's very well explained underneath each of them as to what the fee is for and why you should pay that fee.
Our next question, so one controversial action taken by the current government was the closing of Bomber. Given your experience working at Bomber and the fiscal responsibilities of your position, how would you advise WUSA to move forward with the Bomber space?
Well, it wasn't actually the current administration that did that, but it's definitely in our plan to reopen the Bomber. A part of that is the capital improvement fee for this building that was passed in our general meeting last year. We sent out a survey, and about 4,000 students answered that survey, and they voted for a lounge-type space. It's still going to have a bar. It's still going to have food. We're going to have different rooms that people can book out, and they can get food and drinks delivered to that space. I know that Seneca is currently working on like a plan for the renovations and all of that. But what my team and I plan to do is use one of those town halls that Abby was discussing to get further student feedback on what they would like with that space, and then move forward with those things for renovations.
Thank you. So even while anticipating budget cuts due to the Student Choice Initiative, your platform advocates for more jobs with WUSA. How will you achieve this while maintaining a balanced budget?
For the past year, our budgets actually weren't that affected by the Student Choice Initiative. I've worked for WUSA for 5 years now. I definitely see a few gaps within our processes where I feel like we can more efficiently distribute the budget that we do have. And my plan isn't necessarily to create a large number of jobs, but to then prioritize the money that we do have and give our student leaders more responsibility within our commercial operations. So that means that for students, by students, run by students, we actually will be run by students.
Just want to follow up. You said you found a couple of gaps in the budgeting process. Could you talk about some of those and which ones specifically?
I think in the past few years we've been hit by a couple things that we didn't see coming, and we just tried to adapt based on just keeping things going. But part of what my team and I want to do is not necessarily come in and we want to do these things and we're going to get them done in the year. Our plan is to make small incremental changes within the processes, within everything, so that long term WUSA can better advocate and benefit the student experience on campus.
Second follow-up, if you please. So just to confirm then, you are saying that what WUSA would be doing under your guidance would be placing full-time jobs, possibly splitting them up, and transferring that management and that responsibility over to part-time students, possibly more than one.
Okay, so one example is that our international news previously had a manager and an assistant manager. We've dissolved the assistant manager position, and we currently only have a manager. And the manager does a lot of the administrative work and all of those things within iNews. What I would like to do is take the existing part-time staff that iNews has, that the ones that we know are there, the ones that we know are dedicated to us, the ones that work really, really hard, and I want to train them on the administrative side in terms of scheduling and ordering and doing all those basic things. And I want, instead of the manager to be doing those things with their time, I want the manager to be training them and fostering their experience within iNews, rather than just doing all the work themselves. Because I feel like the students will benefit more just from a learning experience with that.
We now have time to take some questions from the audience. So does anyone have any questions for the candidate for VP Ops and Finance?
We actually do have one. All right.
Hi, so I just had a question. You said that the goal of Team Vision and your administration isn't to get elected into the office and completely reinvent the system and retcon everything, but and the plan is to implement small changes in the system that would have a long-term effect. But I just want to know what are the approximate timelines of your the changes you wish to implement? So what's the tentative timeline for the bomber coming back, or the iNews training to be different?
I think in terms of bomber, we have the current timeline is that it's going to be open at the end of summer 2021. that really depends on how far our current CPOF gets with this plan by the time I've taken it over, and what happens with this construction, because it's a rule on campus that you can't have two construction companies in such a small space at the same time. So that really depends on all of those things. I would like to keep that timeline because, like, personally, I dislike that we don't have a bar on campus right now, and I feel like the student experience is really suffering because we don't have that right now. So, like, I'll do my very best to keep us on time, but there's so many things that aren't within our control that really depend on the university on a whole. So, 2021?
Okay, and another question I had was, you mentioned that the Student Choice Initiative didn't really affect the budget this past year. There wasn't that significant of a drop, so you didn't have to worry about it too much. But from my understanding, in future years, as students become more and more aware of the Student Choice Initiative and the usefulness, like their personal utility for some of the things that they're opting in for, like there are some things that currently, as a first year, I opted into everything because I didn't know what I need and what I'd be like actually using. Probably in future years, I will be opting out of some fees just because I'm not using them. So I feel like over the years, that adoption rate of opting out of fees will increase as people become more aware of what they don't actually need or don't want. So how are you gonna like budget for that or accommodate for that?
I do have an answer, but do you know which fees that you would actually opt out of, given the chance?
Dental.
Dental? Do you have your own dental here? Is that why?
Yeah, and there's just a bunch of fees that I've like never used, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like our health and dental plan was always something that you could opt out of. So that's something that students have always, I've been here for 9 years, we have always been able to opt out of the health and dental plan if we had like our parents or we had a job that provided that for us. In terms of the other fees, I think that really falls on us as a team to educate students on what those fees are actually paying for, because some people don't even realize how connected to WUSA so many things that they experience are. Like the international news is run by us. When we reopen Bomber, it's run by us. Like all of the services, GLOW, Women's Center, RAISE. RAISE advocates so much for marginalized people on this campus. So like even if you're not going to their office to experience things, they are doing things for us on this campus. If you are part of any club, that like your club's fee is paying for that, and it's even if you're not in a club, you paying that fee allows that experience to exist on this campus. So I feel like it's our job to explain to students and help them understand why these fees are so important to not like them personally, but to the experience on this campus as a whole.
So what I'm understanding is the plan is in order to combat potential decrease in the amount of fees that are paid by students, you'd like to inform students about how important and how essential those services are so that they're less willing to opt out?
Yes.
Hello. So I do agree that it is clubs and services on campus are very important for the student experience. Just want to know if there's anything financially you could do for clubs and services to actually fulfill their potential better.
That is definitely more a question for NADA, but to speak to that, what we want to do is improve the intersectionality between our clubs and our services, and improve the club system on a whole, because we understand that right now it is a very complicated system that requires a lot of red tape. We want to make that easier for you guys so that when you want to have events, when you want to do whatever you need to do, it's easier for you to get those things done so that your fundraising abilities are a lot higher than what they are right now.
Okay.
Do we have any more audience questions?
Sorry. So I have another question. I was just wondering, so there is the WUSA endowment fund in order for students to give their ideas for campus initiatives that they believe deserve to be funded by WUSA and implemented campus-wide. And so I personally heard from other people and experienced that it's a little inaccessible to be able to petition your idea and your initiative to the endowment fund board. We have a similar one for the environment faculty, WESA, and it's also very strict. There's a lot of guidelines and there's a constitution to follow that's fairly inaccessible. So is there anything you guys would be willing to do to make it more accessible for more students to present their ideas? Because currently I think it's a little intimidating for new students to want to present their ideas, but they don't know how to go about it, how to garner interest, etc.
Okay, I'm not necessarily very familiar with the process of the students bringing these ideas to these things. My experience is really just on the accounting side of those things when the invoices and the sponsorships are approved. But that's definitely something that we can look into, and everything that you've just explained sounds exactly like the things that we want to hear when we have our town halls. So if I win, my office is going to be right upstairs. You just show up anytime and you let me know.
Thank you. I think we'd like to ask our final question for you. So you mentioned before how integrated WUSA is into student life. If student services like international news or used bookstore were found to be unsustainable, what would you advise?
Can you clarify what you mean by unsustainable?
Yes, found to be losing money, found to be unsustainable monetarily. What would you advise?
Is iNews losing money? I feel like we didn't lose money last year. We did? No, yeah, we didn't lose money last year. But...
Sorry, this is a hypothetical. It's about your values. It's to understand what you would do when faced with a similar scenario to this.
Oh, I see what you mean. I definitely think a reevaluation of our processes as in terms of the way these businesses are run, and specifically in my experience, we tend to run our businesses as we are a not-for-profit, so we can't do certain things, whereas in my opinion, we can run our businesses like businesses, still provide student value with low prices, but making money to reinvest into these businesses and into our student life and into our campus life department is a possibility, which Abby and I are actually really excited to look into if we win.
Thank you for coming down and answering our questions. We'll give you a 20-second plug to talk about anything else you want to let the student body know.
I just want to speak to the validity of my team. I am so blown away by all three of these women. We are not here because we want these jobs for ourselves. We are here because we have been a part of WUSA for so long, and we just want to make this the best WUSA as possible for all the students. And we love you.
Next up is this year's candidate for WUSA Vice President of Education. The Vice President of Education advocates for students with respect to education, organizes academic support, and acts as a liaison between the students and the Department of Cooperative Education and Experiential Education. The Department of Cooperative and Experiential Education. They receive a salary of around $50,000 plus benefits.
This year we only have one candidate, Megan from Team Vision. During the election, she'll require a 50% approval from voters to take office. So Megan's a fourth-year chemical engineering student and has been involved with the Engineering Society and WUSA in the past. Her key platform parts are organizing town halls, advocating for public transportation to address student concerns, and representing all of UW's unique programs and faculties. So for each question, you'll have about 4 minutes to respond, and we'll remind you we have 30 seconds left. And we'll also have time, as always, for questions from the audience.
Now to just begin with the first question. Students are often unsure of their rights when working on co-ops. Furthermore, there have been reports of the university not taking action when students have been mistreated by their employers. What steps would you take to ensure that students feel represented and protected even while working away from campus?
That's a really great question because co-op is really integral to many of our programs here at the University of Waterloo. So one thing that I want to work on is advocacy not just in the university but at the provincial level to ensure that students are covered under the Employment Standards Act and do have the full rights that they should have when working on a co-op term. In terms of safety on a co-op term and the co-op office on our campus, I would also note that this has been a concern that has been raised over the past few years, and I know that co-op has been working with their advisors to ensure that students feel heard. So it would really be about determining if this issue does still exist by consulting with our students and then taking that feedback back to co-op as evidence that they still need to work on this issue.
Thank you. So the next question. UW's undergrad programs are known for their academic rigor, which some people feel contribute to an atmosphere of poor mental health. How would your WUSA work to help students in this area?
This is my favorite question so far. So one of my key platform points along with Abby is addressing the root cause of the prevalence of mental health issues on our campus. So a key initiative that I want to work on is absolutely addressing the workload that students face. And what I identify to be one of the key players in this issue is the discrepancy between what students think they need to do to get a good mark in a course and what instructors think the students need to do. So we want to use, as Abby said, a data-driven approach to quantify that gap. And in quantifying the amount of time that students need to spend on a course and thus on a course load, we will have the evidence to talk to the faculties and talk to the university to say this amount of work that you're expecting of students is overwhelming and unreasonable and is a major contributing factor to the prevalence of mental health concerns on our campus.
I just want to follow up by noting that the workload and everything is very different from faculty to faculty, program to program. So how do you plan on taking that into account and making sure that that gets addressed properly?
So I understand that there are several kind of administrative hurdles, but in my ideal world, what would happen is on the syllabus, your instructor would be required to write, you should expect to spend 5 hours per week on this course, or 10 hours per week on this course. And then to follow up in our course evaluation surveys, which some of the questions are dictated university-wide, there would be a follow-up question where students are asked to self-report how many hours per week they spent on that course. So that data would be extremely diverse based on faculty, year, course type, whether it's an elective or a required course, and we can act accordingly.
UW is currently a member of OUSA, which lobbies on our behalf for goals like reduced tuition and student savings within the provincial government. If you had some of Premier Doug Ford's time, what would you want to say to him about student needs?
That's a great question as well. One of the things that I want to work with USA, the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, in particular is the co-op issues that I mentioned earlier, but also the international student experience. So right now, domestic students do have a lot of support from the government, and I think it would be great if some of those supports were extended to international students as well. For example, funding to help them out on academic research projects, as well as community building initiatives to help international students feel welcome in Canada and make them inclined to stay, live in our wonderful country after they graduate.
Next question. So in your platform, you talk about ensuring that public transportation is available and schedules are can be flexible during these kind of things. So how do you plan on tackling that and making sure that you can lobby with the university to ensure that people can attend classes even during service disruptions and things like that?
Sorry, is your question about my platform and making sure that the GRT service works for students, or specifically about service disruptions?
I think more about the first point, but I'd also like to touch on the second point as well.
So to the first point, with the ION opening, some of the bus routes around our campuses have been changed. There's been routes that have been canceled and routes that have been switched. So I want to look at the ridership data that we have from our UPass to say, these are the routes that students need, so that you never have that thing where you're trying to get on the 19 when the high school just got out and you can't get to class on time. We want them to know that they can be profitable by running those routes for students at the times when students need them. And then furthermore, with regard to service disruptions, Students' Council is of the opinion that transit could be considered an essential service in order for students to access their campus. So this is really more of a government advocacy issue than a university advocacy issue. However, if we are unsuccessful in ensuring that transit is always accessible from a regional perspective, then we could look for a collaboration between WUSA and the university to provide alternative transit options in the event of another service disruption.
Thank you very much. So you spoke wonderfully about the international students. Could you also talk about the students in the colleges and the students off campus? Specifically, the students in colleges don't have a representative running, I believe, in 2 of the colleges. How will you be representing them? How will you be speaking to their needs?
Sure. So we do think that it's very important that the voices of all students are heard, particularly students on our satellite campuses. So even if those students don't have a representative on WUSA's Students' Council, we still want to consult with them directly on issues that more specifically affect their student population. Take, for example, the architecture campus. I'm not an architecture student. I don't necessarily know what the most prevalent issue is for them. So I want to go talk to them to understand what they need from me. I don't want to sit in my office in the SLC and guess what's going on in Cambridge.
Thanks. We now have time for some audience questions. Anything?
So just while we wait maybe for questions, one last one from us at Imprint. You claim to address the unique needs of students in each faculty. How do you plan on doing this?
So part of the plan to represent all students from all programs and faculties is the plan to hold town halls. So in the past, we've had town halls following our general meeting in the SLC, which has been a great medium for students to come out and talk about issues that are important to them. So we want to expand that initiative by holding more town halls, not just in the SLC and not after our general meetings, but across campus. So ideally, we would be circling around the campus in a given term or a given year to make it easy for students to get face time with their executives and talk about the things that matter to them.
And one more from us. Students in some programs express dissatisfaction with their academic advisors, while students in other programs have no issues with them. So how would you work to bridge this gap and make sure that all students are satisfied with these kind of things?
Yeah, so academic advising is a really important part of your university experience in order to make your degree work for you. So I'd like to work with the different faculties to discuss things like how they're training their academic advisors, whether they're being trained on how to support students from an academic perspective, as well as to understand their emotional needs, their physical and mental health needs, because I think that some of the issues that people face with academic advising may be tied to their academic advisors failing to recognize that they need time to be a human on top of being a student.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll do a final call for questions. I see we already have one. Perfect. All right. Two.
Hi. So currently the body on campus, accessibility, is both the body that decides what accommodations a student with a disability is entitled to, and also the body responsible for advocating for those students, creating a little bit of an issue when the gatekeeper is also your advocate. So how do you plan on reconciling this issue?
I think that accessibility is a really important issue on our campus because many of our buildings were built a long time ago and are not super accessible. So working to make continual improvements towards meeting accessibility standards on that front is definitely a priority that we would want to be pushing at the university level and also at a governmental level. In terms of accessibility accommodations, for example, changing a course load or a course assessment structure. I'm not 100% familiar with accessibility's processes for that, but I think something that would be important would be to have a really rigorous appeals process so that if you feel that the person who's trying to be your advocate and also the gatekeeper has treated you unfairly, there is an independent third party that you can go to get a resolution on that issue.
Hi, I heard that you mentioned mental health and how that's a priority for you as well, and you had also mentioned that you're planning on making some academic changes just to help, I guess, with the root causes of why there might be mental health crisis on campus. But I was just wondering if you're also planning on addressing the fact that, I guess, access is also an issue in regards to students actually feeling that they can go and access certain help. As well as I'm hoping that there's going to be a step forward into promoting mental health literacy and I guess distinguishing and instilling the value that there is in, I guess, taking care of yourself and your mental health. So like, is there going to be any progression in terms of increasing mental health on campus, that value and the literacy around it?
So, unfortunately, I don't have a very catchy answer for this one because what we need to do with regard to mental health on our campus is really just to continue a lot of the initiatives that are currently going on. I'm personally very passionate about talking about mental health and reducing the stigma surrounding mental health, and I would like to use my role and my platform to continue to have these conversations about mental health in order to work towards reducing that stigma so that students do feel comfortable accessing mental health resources. And then similarly, in terms of access to those resources, I'm going to be very interested to see how our usage rates for the Empower Me Student Assistance Program looks over the upcoming terms, and to see if that is an effective resource in partnering with our campus wellness team to see if we are adequately supporting students at that point, or if we need to again reevaluate and see if an increase to the student care mental health coverage is in order, or if we need to be advocating to campus wellness for them to change something that they're doing.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm a student from the School of Architecture,
And I know that many of the students don't even know that the elections are going on right now, and they don't have resources from people like you. In what ways do you think you'll be able to communicate with the students at the School of Architecture?
So this is a fantastic question. Like I mentioned, we would definitely be interested in going to the School of Architecture and holding a town hall where it's accessible to you and your classmates in order to hear what you have to say. I'd like to point out that this is not just an empty promise that we're making. Abby and I have booked space at Architecture tomorrow evening. We're going to be there from 5 to 7:30, 5:30 to 7. So talking to students about our platform and about the issues that matter to them. So anyone who's watching from Architecture, come see us tomorrow.
All right, if we have no other questions, all right, then I'd like to thank you for coming down, giving this a very informative interview with us, and answering our questions. We'll allow you a 20-second plug for anything else you want to get out of the way and tell the student body.
Your voice matters on campus. Even if you think that your student association or your student society or clubs don't matter to you, take a few minutes to go to wusa.ca/elections and wusa.ca and learn what we do and make your voice heard tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. The final candidates we will be speaking to will be the WUSA Vice President for Student Life execs. We have two candidates coming in. If you can just give us 1 moment. Okay. The VP of Student Life oversees and presents student services and clubs and promotes student engagement. They receive a salary of around $50,000 plus benefits.
So this year there are 4 candidates running for VP Student Life. Only 2 of them are present today. So we have Ian Tan, who is a 1B Geography and Aviation student, and he plans on expanding club support, doing some mental health advocacy, and supporting student needs. And then we also have Nada from Team Vision, and she is a 3B biomedical engineering student, and she plans on doing volunteer retention, making club processes more efficient, and expanding WUSA services. Oh, you're here? Okay. Yes, okay. So, do you have your paper? Yeah. And so I guess we have our 3rd candidate as well, who's Manas from Team FIBA Boys. And so, yeah, so we'll be asking a couple questions. Each of you will have 1 minute to respond to each, and we'll go in order. And each time we're going to change the order, we'll let you know who's going first and what order. We'll remind you when you have 10 seconds left by holding up a paper like this. And we'll cut you off when your time is done audibly. We'll also have time for questions from the audience as well. Okay, question 1.
Yes, all right. So to begin with question 1, starting with the leftmost candidate. Laurier is a university less than 1 kilometer away from us, but it seems to be bursting with student life. How do you envision student life on UW's campus, and how will you implement it?
As Wilfrid Laurier University has this as their partying place, so I think we'll be opening a bomber shelter for like a partying, and but not like for normal dining and pubs, but we'll be opening for like bigger concerts and events, so that we can also keep in mind the budget. And like in the last time also, the bomber shelter was closed due to huge debts. So I think keeping in that mind, so we'll be organizing concerts and other events, music events and all.
Next candidate, yeah.
Hello? Okay. So in terms of student life, I highly believe that there are different people and different populations who view student life in a different perspective from each other. And so I think in terms of bringing that to students, definitely having clubs be able to appeal for that diverse population. And we do have those clubs. We do have cultural clubs, we have musical clubs, so on and so forth. I can list them for you for days. We also have services that also appeal to different populations. And in terms of Bomber, in terms of our platform, we do have a plan of reopening the Bomber. And so I believe that having all of those things and incorporating all of those things together, that would bring student life to all students.
Finally, yeah.
Hi. So I think it's just a big sort of difference in the way students are between Waterloo and Laurier. If you go to the general Laurier area at King and University, there's just a lot more nightlife, while if you come to Waterloo, it's more quiet. And personally, as a student, I'm actually very excited for the reopening of the Bomb Shelter Pub. I think that will bring a lot more life to the university. I remember when the first time I went to Wilkes, I was pretty blown away, and I was like, why doesn't Musa have this? So I think, yeah, the Bomb Shelter Pub, reopening of the Bomb Shelter Pub will contribute to more life here. But what we can work with is just giving more resources to clubs, I think, as of now.
So our next question. This year, WUSA has been running Wellness Days, weekly events aimed at improving the mental health of students. So if elected, how would you advocate for and improve student mental health? So in this case, we're going to go right to left in the reverse order of last name.
I think mental health in this university, a pretty academic university, mainly derives from the amount of schoolwork that a lot of the students have to do. And so by hosting wellness days, I think we'd have to put more advertising around school so more people do know what wellness day is. A lot of these WUSA services, to most people, they don't know that it exists. So by making it more obvious that we do have these services, I think we'll ultimately make them more effective, because if you don't know that it exists, it might as well not exist.
So in terms of wellness days, I understand that, well, the importance of them in terms of maintaining student mental health, and I would highly advocate for them throughout the term, not just concentrated around what was deemed a typical midterm season, because I acknowledge that people are from different faculties, have their own different schedules, and have their own different workloads throughout the whole term. And so what I do is I would talk to the designated person who is responsible for planning those wellness days and reevaluating how we appeal to the population as a whole. I also feel that it is important to also get feedback from students. So let's say if we are holding an event for students and we don't necessarily appeal to the whole population, having feedback from those students who weren't appealed to would be really helpful. Going into services and what they offer, services are open usually Monday to Friday, have peer support hours. We have mates as a service.
Thank you, candidate Nato.
Sorry? It's Nato, by the way.
My mistake.
Yeah.
Thank you, candidate Nato.
Mental health is very important, and it is an important aspect. So, like in this university, we have a lot of assignments, and midterms are also going on. So it creates a lot of stress. But then we will be organizing the events, and on Saturdays and Sundays we'll be partying in SLC Great Hall. So like that will relieve the stress, and many students like partying, and I think that is the best part of releasing the stress. Also we can do campaigning and can make posters and spread it over the university so that people could get to know that whenever all the events are happening.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay. beginning with Nada, as full-time students on the main campus, it's easy to forget about the needs of other students. How would you guys better integrate Stratford and part-time students into UW's student life?
Amazing question. Ties into our the idea that satellite campuses are very important, as well as residents, as well as university colleges, as well as the main campus. And so how are we going to appeal to satellite campuses? Getting those services that are integral to student life would be our biggest step, and also getting clubs in our satellite campuses as well. So in terms of getting our societies on the satellite campuses, we'd be adopting the MATES model in terms of expanding to the whole university, not just the SLC, and that's what we mean by services aren't just for the SLC, it's for all students, whether they are on in the SLC, residences, university colleges, or even satellite campuses.
Can we take this to Ian now?
I think the student societies at the satellite campuses, we need to allow them to take a bigger role in terms of student engagement. Right now, I think, for example, the GBDA Society and WASA at Architecture, they are very small, very I wouldn't say useless, but they don't really do much in terms of helping students. And I think WUSA should take a bigger stand in terms of helping these societies achieve what their mandates are.
Creating awareness of the services provided to all the students of the GBD community and as well as for the Waterloo. It's very important because they find very tough because I think in Stratford there is very less services provided as compared to the Waterloo students, and so I think we can provide the services to the Stratford students also by doing the same thing what all we do here in SLC or in the Waterloo campus. We can also provide the same services to the Stratford Center also.
Okay, so our next question, UW faces issues of low engagement in some of our student life activities. So how would you work to increase interest in WUSA's events and have more people participating? So we'll go from left to right.
I don't think so that any of the students don't like partying, and many of the students also I don't think so students don't want to get involved in the events that are happening in Waterloo. Also, there are many clubs that has been organized, like the poker club, the cricket club. So people want to get engaged in it, but the thing is that many of the students don't know about them, and they don't know about what all clubs are there, and sometimes they get late to join the clubs. So I think spreading awareness will be the best part to engage all the students and getting them together.
All right, just before we can continue, after you finish speaking, please make sure to turn off your microphone because it creates feedback.
So in terms of increasing engagement, WUSA already does what we call campus life fair at the beginning of the term, and I think that is a great way to get students to learn about what WUSA has in terms of what it has to offer and what they can volunteer for or with. And so in terms of increasing the student engagement, I think that reevaluating the campus life fair, reevaluating how we advertise our services and clubs would be really important to get students to be more interested in seeing what is there for them in each and every service, club, and anything else that WUSA has to offer.
I think right now, part of the reason why there's such low engagement in terms of from students to clubs or any other WUSA services is it's very hard for a club right now to operate and take full use of what WUSA offers. For example, room bookings take a very long time, so when you're a club and you're trying to book a room for an event maybe a month from now, you'll have to get started literally right now in terms of filing the paperwork. And I don't think that you should have to book this far in advance. I don't remember the last time I made social plans 1 month in advance. So just simply making it easier for clubs to operate with less paperwork, I think will ultimately increase engagement.
Thank you. We now have time for some questions from the audience. So if anyone has questions they want to ask to all three candidates or address to a specific one.
Hi. So as you may be aware, Waterloo has a large number of students enrolled in a co-op program. This means that a large number of our students are away from campus for the majority of the year. How do you plan on engaging with them, making sure that they feel engaged with the community, even when they're away, or when they get back, how to reintegrate them with the other students who are here?
Yeah, so if we could start with Ian, actually.
Yeah, so if co-op students are interested in engaging with WUSA, I think there should be an avenue, for example, sort of like a website for co-op students to enter their thoughts or still participate in clubs. I know a lot of co-op students, when they're away on co-op, they go far away, maybe in Toronto or other parts of the GTA, or potentially even out of the country. And so just being able to talk to someone at the university and check up on how they're going with their co-op, or having sort of like a society in a city, for example, a bunch of Waterloo co-op students in downtown Toronto, they can get together every once in a while, sort of like a club system for that.
So we currently have co-op connections, which brings all co-op students together regardless of where they are. I personally very much see having a platform to get all the services accessible to every student who is enrolled in the university, regardless of where they are on the planet. That could range from having someone specific from a specific service, let's say mates, talk to them if they are going through something. If they want to have someone advocate on their behalf in terms of issues that can range from racism or xenophobia, they can access RAISE, so on and so forth. They have the Women's Center, GLOW, so on and so forth. And so I think it is important to have kind of a platform that integrates all of those things together.
I think I think all the clubs have their own platform in which they listen to the issues and also respond to them, and they take the feedbacks of the student. So I think different clubs with different apps and the websites can help them out.
We have another question. Okay.
So I was told to introduce myself. My name is Haider Shah. I'm a 1B student in the environment and business. So my question was in regards to engagement. As the last question you guys got that was scripted, I guess. Like, it's common knowledge that there is a low amount of engagement between the students and the USA activities and all different clubs and their events. And when asked about how you guys would potentially increase engagement, the answers were very vague in terms of, oh, we need to spread awareness, oh, we need to make it easier for clubs to have events. But personally, I think that even if a club is able to have events more often or book rooms more often, for example, that doesn't affect me if I don't care about the club or if I don't know what clubs there are. So for example, if I didn't know that there was a club for something, but I was interested in it, I'd probably never be engaged in their events because a lot of events happen in private rooms, in other buildings, not in common areas where most people will walk through. And so yeah, I just want to know like a more specific, like tangible plan to increase engagement. So what are you guys actually going to do to spread this awareness and make these clubs more accessible for students? Like, do you have like a spotlight plan where it's like, hey, this is the club of the month, and this is what they do, these are their amazing events, and sort of like help advertise for the clubs? Or are you just leaving the clubs on their own to like deal as their own responsibility to increase engagement and get more members?
Amazing question. And the idea that you just spoke about at the very end is actually being implemented. Our WUSA Club's Instagram does those takeovers where clubs apply for those takeovers, and they have those for a week. Clubs shadow what they're doing and tell you where their events are happening. In terms of getting people to be interested in the first place, I think it is important to start with their first day on campus during orientation. And that also ties into our member transition plan. And so getting students to care from day one and appealing to the different interests and different populations on campus would be how we go about that. And you raised a point about clubs meeting in non-accessible areas. I can guarantee you that most of the clubs on campus, when they hold their events, they hold it on campus, on the UW campus, in classrooms that you usually go to. But in terms of your feedback, there's where we get your feedback and work on it. And so I think that kind of an integration of all those things together will eventually get people to get engaged. And I think once I get into office, what I'll do is I will put in those kind of milestones that we need to achieve by a certain date. And first thing would be starting in the fall, having students care from the very first day.
Thank you. Let's turn to Mansa, yeah?
No offense, I think you should get socially active. Because like on Instagram post also, we have stories putting up by the U Waterloo Live, and all about the events that are happening and all about the clubs. And also we have the in SLC we have campaigning of like for 2 to 3 days in which all the clubs have been gathered together and they tell about their own clubs. Also, I think there are many people in the university who know about the clubs, and like I don't think that you don't have even a one friend who will tell you. So like everyone knows about it, and most of the people know about through Instagram.
Ian, yeah.
I'm gonna speak on this from personal experience. The reason why I'm not part of any club is simply because I don't see clubs around anywhere here. There's no advertising for clubs on walls. I have to go to the club's directory and search it up. And maybe there are advertising for like clubs that I haven't seen, but like I haven't seen it, so like it might as well not exist to me, right? So in terms of increasing engagement in clubs, I think clubs need to be allowed to be in more open spaces. And even if they are on campus, this is a pretty big campus. It takes a very long time to walk from like E7 all the way here. And so being able to host by clubs in, for example, the SLC, like right here, being able to do their activities, I think that would be very helpful in terms of getting people to join clubs, because if they can see what you're doing, then they'll have some incentive to join.
So just to follow up on your answer, you mentioned that like currently there's already like the clubs fairs that exist where clubs will all get together and present like what their club does, and how there's like Instagram stories and Instagram posts and etc. But like the problem is that's already happening. Like we're doing that. We've been doing that for years now, probably. I wouldn't know, but I assume we've been doing that for years, and yet engagement is so low. So I'm just wondering, like, what's something new that you would do, something innovative, something that would actually create like a rise in the Waterloo community to get more engagement in clubs?
So this is a directed question. But if the other candidates wish to respond, they may.
Instagram posts are, I think, enough to like it's a social active. It's a platform where everyone can see the stories and everyone can get informed about that. So I think that's enough to tell all the people. We cannot go personally to everyone to tell about the clubs.
I'd like to answer that, please. So in terms of our Instagram takeover that I alluded to, that started in the spring term, spring 2019. And so we're on our third term now, I believe. It's still in the process of getting better. And again, having feedback from a person like you who might not see clubs as having as much impact as you'd like them to would be important. Also, in terms of concrete examples, most first years live in residence. And so I think that it is important to try to get residence dons to also be on board with what WUSA is doing. And so having a platform to keep students in residence up to date on what is happening would increase engagement in that sense. And I can tell you a lot of points, but the thing is, I think that it starts from day one. Again, as I said, day one, you come to campus, orientation, that is when students would either choose to get engaged or not. And that's our job to do that.
Ultimately, I want to be able to allow clubs, if they want a certain space on campus, to immediately go there, for example, a lecture hall. And also, I want to expand upon and have a bigger orientation. For example, I know Western has a really good orientation program that's almost like a tourist attraction to London. And so to be able to have a big orientation with a lot of interesting festivals that people would actually advertise on social media to the point where tickets get sold out, I think that'd be very beneficial for Waterloo and to WUSA as a whole in terms of a profit-generating mechanism.
Hi, my name is Canon. So I have two questions. One is specifically for Ian and the other is for all of you. Yeah. So the question for Ian is, on your website you have a policy saying that certain clubs which are large should get special privileges, like having their forms, what's the word? Having their forms be more ahead of the process, like they should have more privileges in that sense, or having better opportunities to book spaces and stuff like that. Do you think it's fair for? Do you think this is fair for smaller clubs?
So these large clubs that I'm referring to have some sort of academic purpose, such that if their operations were hindered, it would somewhat hinder the students themselves. The best example I can give you off the top of my head is the Aviation Society. Just the day before yesterday, they hosted a massive career fair. And during that fair, they had to fill out, I think, almost all the forms, which had to be done much, much more in advance. Also during the fair, they bought, I think, almost $1,000 worth of pizza. And I think last year, the club heads actually had to pay for the pizza out of their own pocket to be reimbursed about a month or so later. And this year, I think it was paid for by the WUSA credit card. So when I'm talking about these large clubs, I'm talking about, for example, the Aviation Society or DECA or any other club that has to pay out a lot of money for them to operate and have to fill out like an obscene amount of paperwork on what is a few execs who still have their school obligations to like work on. So those are the clubs that I'm referring to. Did I answer your question?
So that was a directed question. Of course, it was about should larger clubs have certain privileges. I see that some of the other candidates want to respond. That's fine. Nada, if you will.
So being in the Aviation Society is not a general model to go with when you are judging how club operations go. Generally, when a club or a society a club, society, or a service is planning an event, a lot of logistics go behind that, and I'd understand why they need to plan for it a month in advance. In terms of clubs, just like the chess club, they can put in their form today and it'll be processed within 2 to 3 business days. And we do our best to process it in the most minimal time ever.
Does the final candidate have anything they want to say?
I'm not going to follow up on this, but go towards the question for your orientation. As you suggested, I'm one of the math OT members, so I'm responsible for creating the math orientation for next year. So I do agree that I would really like to have a week-long event where we can plan this, but over the last winter break, I believe, a referendum was held where students preferred a fall reading week, a full fall reading week compared to a week-long orientation. Do you think that, are you in a way saying that you should have a full orientation week? Are you trying to go against student voice in that sense?
I don't think you need a full week of orientation to have fun. I remember this year, the highlight of the orientation was the bouncy castles in the parking lots. That was pretty fun. And there's a lot of aspects to orientation that doesn't have to exist. Like the orientation I'm referring to at Western is a 2-day thing. So it doesn't have to take a week. And I don't know how you can really plan a week-long orientation that would be fun for like the entire week. It's pretty hard to like find different events without getting repetitive for the entire week. So no, I'm not going against the students' voice.
All right.
Hi, I'm Edward. I am a 3A engineering student. My question is, there's been a recent push for making events and services more accessible, both physically accessible, sensory accessible, financially accessible. As being in charge of these clubs and services, do you recognize that not all students have the same ability to participate in all events and need accommodations, and these accommodations need to be publicized in a way that is welcoming? So what are your plans to make events more accessible in all different facets, and essentially increase student engagement with populations that would otherwise not attend these events or clubs out of fear of being ostracized or not being able to participate fully?
I believe that was directed at everyone? Yes. All right, so let's actually begin with Monster.
I think we can organize small events in which there will be less people, so that they could so that all in the like less if there will be less people, so like everyone will be taking initiative and taking a good part in the event. So like organizing small events and larger events, so we can do that.
So to answer your question, accessibility would vary from a person to a person, and that's what I talked about earlier, is reaching out to all different populations. And going on top of my head, there is a point in my platform that I would like to implement in terms of having intersectionality between club events and services. And so what I mean by intersectionality is having, I guess, two things that would appeal to a certain population but not the other come together, and so that is how we accommodate to the different populations. So let's say we have an event between Raise and the Glow Center. You have the intersectionality of being queer and a person who's Black, Indigenous, or of color. And in terms of having a club even, we have Cutie Cut, who are the queer trans people of color. And so I think that that wouldn't be an issue in terms of accommodating for people. If someone has an idea of what we're lacking of in terms of accommodating the different intersectionalities, then they could really go and create a club just like we had with Cutie Cut.
I'm going to ask for a point of clarification. You listed two barriers of entry. One is the financial aspect and one is the physical aspect, right?
Yes, I was kind of just referring to like physical, sensory, financial. I was just making a general comment on accessibility.
And I think for clubs, that is a very hard question for me to honestly answer. Because in terms of financial aspects, I know that every club can levy their own fee as long as it's not unreasonable. And I don't think, I think there needs to be a very long discussion about exactly what WUSA can do to stop a club from levying a fee. I know that you can join a club without full membership, so that sort of answers your question on the financial side. But for the physical and sensory side, I think there needs to be a way for people who join clubs to talk to the club head about exactly what their concerns are regarding if they can't access the facility, or if a certain event is too loud or too flashy, etc. I think that's the best I can answer your question, to be honest.
Just following on the orientation question again. So I know you want to have a much grander orientation week so people have much more fun. How do you expect to pay for that? Because currently we charge a fee for all the first-year students, but if we are going to be doing much grander events, we will need to have much more fees associated with that.
Well, if it's a shorter overall orientation, it should be cheaper because every day of orientation does cost. And so if we're shortening it from a week-long 5 or so day orientation to a 2-day orientation, we can use the money saved from the orientation days that have been removed. This is just mental math off the top of my head. I don't have the specific details right now.
Continuing on, Nada.
Can you repeat the question?
If I'm correct, and I hope you will correct me if I'm wrong, the question is how to budget appropriately when expecting a grander orientation. Will that charge be directed right at first-year students, or will we be managing the budget in some other way?
Okay, so in terms of orientation, I acknowledge that different faculties need their own programming and they have their own needs, and so budgeting would be in that accordance in terms of seeing what each faculty wants to do in terms of programming again. I also think that it would be a great idea to have faculties conjoin together to hold events that would then make it a little bit cheaper on each faculty to pay. For example, the event that we held last orientation in the Great Hall, it was between 3 faculties and it went really well, and it was our first time holding it on campus, and that was one of the changes that we did this year in terms of orientation. So budgeting isn't really an issue if the projects are proven to have valuable effects on all students that are incoming, and if it's appropriate to the faculties.
I have nothing to say in this issue.
I've got one question of my own that I want to ask. So, Ian, you're a first-year student, and so I'm wondering what you think makes you qualified to be VP of Student Life, and as well for the other candidates, what do you feel gives you the qualifications? How about this today?
Yeah, so for my qualification for VP Student Life, I think, I hope not to offend anyone here, but by comparing a first-year university student to a fourth-year university student, ultimately every year I look back, it's sort of like comparing junior kindergarten to senior kindergarten. We are pretty much all equally inexperienced, I think.
So in terms of my experience that allow me to be qualified for this role, I have been involved with clubs for almost a year now. I went from being a general club sport team member to being the club's assistant. And if that doesn't make sense to people here, you have the club's manager who's a full-time person, you have the club's assistant who's a part-time person, and then an amazing volunteer group who we call the club sport team. Orientation, I've been an orientation leader for 2 years now, since my second year here at the university. So I do have an idea of how orientation goes. And I am in science, yes, but I also was exposed to the orientation that happens in terms of the other faculties as well. Services, another thing under my mandate, I have been involved with RAISE, Racial Advocacy for Inclusion, Solidarity, and Equity, which is a fairly new service. I'm currently a coordinator this term, so I can also speak to a lot of the duties that a coordinator does in terms of logistically planning events, making sure that the office is accessible to all students, and just handling a budget. So I think with all the experience that I've acquired, I was able to gain a lot of information and a lot of insight on how to improve student life for not just third years, not just second years, first years, for every student on campus and on satellite campuses as well.
I myself is a first year student, so I think I'm closely related to the first year students, and I think I know what all the needs, what all needs do they, what all they face and what all do they need. So I think I can best make up for them.
Hi again. So my question is, so far one of like the factors that I'm considering in regards to my vote would be a kind of a unified vision. So for example, Nada has the benefit of being a part of Team Vision, and so she has an entire team, an entire administration and government supporting her, so that if she gets elected into office, she will be elected alongside the president that she's already been working closely with, and the VP of Finance that she's already been working closely with. So that's kind of an advantage in where she already has a relationship and a bond with the other members of the government. So I just wanted to know your thoughts, Ian and the other candidate. What do you think how do you think you would mesh well with the other members of the government? And what is your vision? Does it overlap? Are there things that coincide? Do you think that you could honestly say that you would work well together with members of government after having taken the spot of one of their internal members?
Yeah, I guess Ian, you can start if you want.
I don't think it's appropriate for me to consider them my opponents. If I were into the VP student life position, I would have to work with them. And even though they are the only ones running, I don't disagree with their vision at all. I think they are right to reopen the bomb shelter pub, and looking through the website, I pretty much agree with most of what they say. And so, hopefully they don't hate me or anything if I win. But yes, I will have to work with them, and I will do my best to make sure that we match.
I think when I heard about this speech, they were all saying their speech was good, and I think they are true, and they can make it. I don't fear of losing, but then I'm confident enough, and I'm happy that I stood for the position at least.
I have one more question.
Hey, I just had a general question. It was just for anyone running for VP of Student Life. Yeah, it's just related to the Bomb Shelter Club. With the recent closing of the Bomb Shelter Club, many clubs and societies, with the recent closing of the Bomb Shelter Club, I was just saying earlier, many clubs and societies have been struggling to be able to find venues that are suitable with WUSA standards. So I was just wondering, what would you do to help accommodate those clubs to help those suitable venues that are according to WUSA standards? And what are I wasn't here earlier, but I heard earlier that you guys were speaking of potentially reopening the Bomb Shelter Pub. I just want to kind of hear a little bit more about that, just because I just wasn't here earlier. So that's pretty much it.
You guys hear that clearly? Okay. I guess Nada, if you want to begin.
So opening the bomb shelter or the bomber, the space is actually one of our priorities. as running as part of the team, and that would be under Elena, and she can better speak to that. But in terms of having venues for clubs to be able to book, I know for a fact that Drag Club used to book the Bomber as a space for their drag show. And this year, I believe they had it in the NPR. And so in terms of having spaces to hold events for clubs, I don't think that that would be an issue. It's just a matter of identifying what venues would be most suitable for those club activities. And I think that that would be easily navigated by, first of all, the club's manager, who is the resource for clubs to go to whenever they have any questions. And yeah, like it's unfortunate that the Bomber closed down, and we are going to open it eventually. But in the meantime, there is still an opportunity for clubs to hold their events on campus.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question. In response to your point earlier, so you mentioned that the bomb shelter was going to reopen. How much of a priority is this, considering that the majority of the clubs are now having to go across the street to Wilfrid Laurier, which is an inconvenience to Wilfrid Laurier themselves and Student Union and their clubs, because now they're competing with days, which we have an available space, which is catching dust at the moment. So how much of a priority is this really to the candidates at the moment?
So that would be under the Vice President's Operations and Finances mandate, who's Elena on my team. But in terms of opening the space, it is already being implemented in terms of planning for it. There was a survey that was sent out to students to ask what they wanted in that space. And from there, our current Vice President of Operations and Finance is working on those plans. And so having our next Vice President of Operations and Finance, hopefully Elena, we will continue to implement that plan to have Bomber ready. Have Bomber ready in, ideally, spring 2021.
Would you like to answer that question? Do you want me to repeat the question, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So he was asking about clubs that used to use the Bomber as a venue to hold events and stuff. They don't have access to that right now. So he's wondering about how to support clubs that are trying to find venues in that sense, and also how much priority is getting the Bomber stuff accelerated for.
Well, I can't say to the specifics on what their plans are for the Bomber, but as a temporary measure until the Bomber gets reopened, I think we need to look into using WUSA's power as a corporation to get better deals on certain venues. For example, the best I could think of in terms of location is Eastside Mario's as an alternative venue for now. It's about 500 meters from here. And so if we can get Eastside Mario's as a venue for clubs right now, then I think that would last us maybe a year or two until the Bomber reopens.
We will not be opening the Bomber fully, but like for like larger events and concerts and like of the alumni parties and all, for that purpose it will be open, and with the stable earnings, if it starts earning stably, then we will think of like making a dining place and pub.
So one more question.
Hi, I'm Harry. I'm a second-year actuarial science student. And for Ian, I noticed on your platform you wanted to implement a chief actuary role in WUSA. And I wanted to ask you, like, why you think WUSA needs an actuary and what that role would entail. And I guess for Nada and Manas, like, in response to that, would you implement this role, and why or why not?
Yes, so that role is generally for, it's mainly to look good on your resume. If you are the chief actuary, that does look better on co-op placements, doesn't it? But for actuarial purposes, I don't think WUSA has a specific need for reevaluating their insurance policies. That would be more of an accountant's job. But if you want some actuarial work, I guess I can make you look at some Excel spreadsheets.
So to answer your question, I agree with Ian that we are not in need for a chief actuarial position because we already have those pre-existing individuals in the WUSA office working every day to make sure that they have the best insurance policy that would serve all the students during all of their club's events or even services events. Sorry, what was the other part of your question?
My question was because of my interest in seeing Ian's policy on that, and I wanted to know, like, because I didn't think WUSA needed one, and if the other candidates thought WUSA needed one.
So, okay, to continue on that, if it's actually needed, then consultations will occur. We talk with people who have been working in that field, get opinions from them, and if it is needed, and if it's what the students want, then that will happen. But at this point in time, I don't believe that we have a need for that. And we also have our amazing Vice President of Operations and Finance, and so they'd be the person working closely with them.
I don't think so that we have one, but then we can think of it, and we can have a meeting in which we can discuss about it.
All right. I certainly want to thank all the candidates for coming in.
Just like the opportunity gave all the other candidates, we'll give you guys each 20 seconds to plug whatever you want and give everyone a last field. So we'll go right to left from Ian. So 20 seconds again, so try to keep it brief.
Yeah, so to recap my points, I want to make an airport shuttle to Moldy Airport. There's a lot of FEDS buses going to Toronto. I don't see why we shouldn't have one to the airport, especially with the amount of students that we have that live far away that they would need to take the plane. I think that we also need to reevaluate how clubs operate and have less paperwork, and I have no time.
Thank you. Nada?
I think that WUSA has something to offer for every student on campus. Again, it's a matter of examining that, and if you come across an idea that you want, reaching out to people in WUSA is your best way to go. If you find someone walking in the SLC, chances are they work for WUSA. So get your voice heard and make sure to vote starting tomorrow.
Thank you, Nada.
Our team name is Biba Boys, and by that we mean gentlemen. And we will be working like a gentleman. So Biba Boys is your voice, so make it a choice.
Thank you to all the candidates. So on behalf of Imprint and WUSA, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to this year's Executive Candidate Debate. A big shout out to all the candidates for taking time to do this. Just a reminder that voting opens tomorrow and continues until Thursday at votes.wusa.ca, so make sure to do that. And Imprint will be continuing our election coverage on all our socials and in the paper which comes out Wednesday morning. So that's at UW Imprint on Insta and Facebook.
Everyone, please have a great evening and don't forget to vote.